I'm Yusuf Salaam. Welcome to the Peace, Love, and Shawarma podcast, where my friends across the vast spiritual, cultural, ethnic, and geographical spectrum and I discuss possibilities and strategies for a better world where love, peace, and justice reign supreme. This episode's guest is my wonderful friend, NeNe Mulhem. NeNe is a Palestinian American Muslim humanitarian, freedom fighter, activist, and proud product of two war refugee parents. Her father's family was displaced from Palestine to Jordan, and her mother's family to Kuwait, where they then had to flee back to Palestine before moving to the USA. This well-educated, kind, and charitable businesswoman is Palestine's first figure skater and coach, and is now working on becoming the country's first female scuba dive instructor. She's passionate about humanitarian activism and helping Palestine's most vulnerable and/or forgotten populations. Her focus has been on children, especially the orphaned and disabled. She hopes to one day adopt her own children and help start an orphanage for the children of Let Them Grow Up programs. More information about her education, accomplishments, and activism is available in the written description of this podcast. Without further ado, let's welcome our precious guest. Welcome, NeNe. It's so good to have you on the podcast today, my sister.
Thank you for having me. Always good to be here with you, Joe.
It's always a joy to talk, chat, message, whatever it is we do. You're a wonderful sister and deeply appreciated. So I want you to know that.
Oh, appreciation is mutual. You know that.
Yes. Very thankful for that.
I'm always humbled by your kind words.
Oh, yeah. I mean those things. You know me. Yeah. Anyone who follows me on social media knows that I'm real. I don't just throw things out there. So, yeah.
Joe's always keeping it real.
You got to keep it real in love and keep it real in love, but keep it real. Yes, I've got some questions for you and just some crazy things been happening in the news, especially yesterday. There was an assassination attempt, it looks like, on former President Trump, and that'll be part of the topic of conversation today, which I condemn. I condemn that, and everybody needs to know that. Yeah, I hate violence, hate war, hate all of those things. So this is the Peace, Love, and Shawarma podcast. So we need to do better as humanity. And that includes Mr. Trump and the rest of us, everybody. So let's talk.
Yeah.
First question. Demonization of human beings based on ethnicity, nationality, religion, and sexuality, along with hate propaganda, are now widely condemned in the United States, with few exceptions. Two glaring exceptions are Muslims and Palestinians. It seems like people in the media, politicians, can say whatever they want about these people groups, and it's such a shame. There's so much demonization, so many stereotypes, and I'm going to give a little bit more and then get you to speak to this. Former President Trump used the word Palestinian like it was the ultimate cuss word in the last presidential debate. Certain members of Congress freely expressed their unbridled hatred of Palestinians. One has even worn an IDF, an Israeli military uniform, to work, okay, on Capitol Hill. I mean,
it's comical.
It's stupid. Last night, directly after the assassination attempt on former President Trump, a Fox News contributor, former NYPD Inspector Paul Morrow, was quick to call for an investigation into the shooter's links to pro-Palestinian campus activism. I mean, what a doofus. And how could you pin that on him? What if he just automatically just assumed it was Jewish people or black people or gays or Christians? Okay, let's see which Christian group is linked to this. You know, man, they'd be calling for his head.
Mayhem.
According to a recent report, Delta Airlines engaged in some extremely Islamophobic and anti-Palestinian rhetoric on Twitter after a pearl-clutching passenger complained about a flight attendant wearing a Palestinian flag pin, which he referred to as a Hamas badge, and the Delta representative had replied, "Oh, I would have been terrified too," over a flag. over a flag. These people are freaking out, these brainwashed people. So would you please speak to all that?
I'm going to do my best to keep it brief, Joe. As an American Palestinian who has lived through many moments of anti-Palestinian racism, of Islamophobia, who's witnessed my father go through that, I could talk all day about this. And right now, it's magnified. It's to the largest degree we've ever seen. It's out of control, especially when we're getting to the point now where it's involving corporations taking stances like this. Like, it's enough that the Zionist propaganda and fear mongering and whatever narratives they construe that are false have infiltrated our politics and our government. But it's getting down to the most ridiculous of situations when you, for example, talk about the Palestinian pin on a flight attendant for Delta Airlines. Maybe she is Palestinian. And if anybody was wearing a flag from any other country, would you be threatened by a French flight attendant wearing a French flag? I mean, it's a flag. It's really out of control. Yeah, I mean, they can't hide it anymore. It's the biggest hypocrisy. We're in a day and age where you have to be so careful. You'll get canceled for just about anything if you give the slightest indication or slightest micro racial aggressive, wording. They're quick to cancel you and call you anti-Black, anti-Semitic, homophobic, anti-trans, all of these things. But none of that sensitivity applies to Arabs, especially, it feels like, Palestinians and Muslims. It definitely makes us feel less valued and less than human, even when we're walking around and sharing the same establishments, working the same jobs, living in the same spaces as these people, but we can't seem to get the same level of acknowledgement when there's clear injustice and violence happening. Like, somehow, even though we are the victims, we are always spun around to be the ones to blame and to be labeled the terrorists. And it's truly crazy because we don't see that happening with other races. Like, it's one thing if something was happening to, a Jewish person or a Black person or a gay person. But since when do they also flip the narrative to make them appear as if they are the ones doing the attacking or causing the problems? It's usually people are bringing to light the discrimination that's happening, and then they debate about it. But with us, there just seems to be all these complicated layers. Like, they want to, first of all, not acknowledge our lived experiences, not give it as much attention or concern or take as much action towards clear laws that are being broken, hate laws in many cases. I mean, we just heard about the lady that tried to kill a child in Texas. And what did she get? It's a Palestinian child. It was. So she got away with much less. But if it was any other child, it would have been tried a lot harder.
She tried to drown him. That was the case. Is that correct?
Yeah. And they turn around even after that incident and have the nerve to run some headlines labeling some sort of connection. And no, not everything is connected back to Hamas. Not everything is connected back to terrorism. If something happens to a Mexican person, are we going to automatically link it back to the cartel? There's way too many Mexicans in this country to just assume, and it's extremely racist, to assume that everyone is affiliated with the cartel. Like any other race, if we were to do what they're doing to us, would just be treated way differently. But, here we are. Anything that they can do to distract from the actual crimes that are the crimes against humanity that are being committed against us, the actual genocide that is happening towards us. And I mean, there's, like I said, different layers to this. We have the anti-Palestinian side, then we have the Islamophobia side. And, the way that people convolute everything together, just like they do with Judaism and Zionism, confusing them to be the same thing, is just a shame. Like, or confusing Jews to be the same as Israelis. No, there are Israeli Jews and there are Jews who aren't Israeli, and then there are Israeli Jews who aren't Zionists. Just like the Palestinians, we have Palestinian Muslims, we have Palestinian Christians, we have Palestinian Jews. But yes, definitely the Palestinian Muslim population seems to be the one that is getting the worst end of the stick here. I'm just at a loss of words now, because you would think, like you mentioned, with us living in an age in America where we're pretty united against hate towards any particular group, it's not accepted in the general public anymore. We, in this new generation and the generations younger than me, don't care anymore about race, religion, sexuality. Just be a good person. Just live a peaceful life. Just do right by others. And what you like is what you like. What you are is what you are. We're not judgmental. We're actually open-minded. We appreciate learning each other's cultures. And it's just shocking that we can't unite on any of those shared morals to give the same respect to Palestinians and Muslims that are suffering right now. But even when these crimes are happening to other areas where we all generally agree here in the US, right? Like everything that's happening in Palestine right now, people aren't even talking about the animals that are being killed, the vulnerable populations, the disabled. I mean, in the United States, animal love is such a big deal here. Everyone has a dog, but when it's happening to Palestinian animals, where's PETA? Nobody has a voice. Nobody can do anything. When it's Disability Awareness Month in this country, everyone's bringing to light all of the different disabilities and creating awareness and raising money and just putting a light on all of the different issues that people of this vulnerable community suffer. Yet nobody is talking about how 4 days ago, Mohammed Saleh Bahar was confined in his home in Palestine for a week by the IDF before they executed him. And he has Down syndrome. I mean, where does that relate back to him being part of Hamas, that he shouldn't get the same treatment that any child with Down syndrome here in the US would get? Like, it seems like because he's Palestinian, because he's Muslim, it's even in Disability Awareness Month, not news worth sharing, even though it was funded by US dollars. So when we get down to that level, then it's particularly even hurtful, because we're so used to it by now with, a grown Palestinian man. They don't look at him like my father, your father. He's Palestinian, he's Muslim. We're just gonna, whatever, let that go by. We've begun to do it with women and children, and now multiple cases of disabled children, and nobody's even talking about it. It doesn't matter, I guess, because we're Palestinian and Muslim. It's really disheartening. It's discouraging. But we can't let that stop us from continuing to fight for everyone who is suffering still in Palestine.
The abuse is nothing new. This has been happening for decades. I've heard atrocious stories, and of course, I know that you have too. So, but one would think, with all of this news, that this would be brought to the forefront. But when they are killing so many journalists, when they've killed more journalists have been killed in this conflict than so many other wars, like combined, it's absolutely crazy. And I do encourage people, watch Al Jazeera English live on YouTube. It's free. The footage doesn't lie. Follow Palestinians, follow people. I can help you follow people on social media, Jewish groups, especially Jewish human rights groups, even some based out of Israel, occupied Palestine, but call themselves Israeli. But yet there's so much going on that you need to be aware of. And, like you said, and this is something, because I took my youngest son to the last American Muslims for Palestine convention in Chicago. And his first reaction when he got in was just how precious the families were, how they loved each other, their hospitality towards us. And he also noticed just how beautiful all the women were. And I was like, you're not wrong. And prejudice does that. There's people that you would date if you didn't know their ethnicity, their religion, their background. Some of you are listening, and you would want to date these people, both Palestinian men and women. And,
and you would want them to
know
be
all the
friends
labels
with
and have your
children.
hatred and prejudice. Yes.
I just saw a reel recently on Instagram. A white American was sharing how he gets excited every time he's had to move and found out that his neighbor was an Arab, especially if they were Muslim. He felt safer. He felt like he knew he was going to befriend another family that quite literally adopted his child. He said, if you live next to an Arab family, just know your child is going to be always eating well, always having extra eyes looking out after them. The family is going to quite literally adopt your child. And they're just great, fantastic neighbors to have. So it's really sad when in a time we're living in complete anxiety and suspense. There's a lot of division happening in this country, a lot of crime. And little do people know that, now more people are becoming informed and less ignorant, thankfully. But still, there's a large part of the population who are just so used to what Fox News is dishing out and the New York Times, and they get apprehensive when they see a Muslim neighbor, especially with a Palestinian flag hanging. Takes some time, but they start to see like, oh, wow, these people are actually really generous and they take care of their neighbors just like family. And it's really sad that we have been dehumanized to the point that, people are scared of us, don't consider us of equal status to be acknowledged when hate crimes are being committed against us, when we're literally being killed for our race. I mean, the lady in Texas, how psycho can you be to be afraid of a child? But still, her motive went back to her fear of some connection to Hamas. And it's
the
just
government, the media, so many churches are complicit in this hatred, and it's got to stop.
Yeah, it really does.
And I've experienced what you're saying with Muslims, with my own children, who took them on just like their own children. Gave my youngest son his first job. Matter of fact, I interviewed my friend from Pakistan, Don Mahmood, and he and his family are Muslim. They're beautiful people, and they have been such a blessing. They were when we lived in Atlanta, and they still are. We're just lifelong friends. We should celebrate each other's differences and love each other and appreciate what each individual and what each culture brings to the table.
And I'm glad you brought that up because it is a critical time. It's getting out of control. This CARE had reported receiving over 8,000 complaints nationally last year from Muslims who reported experiencing discrimination or hate incidents. This is the most the group's ever gotten in its 30-year history, including after 9/11. This is all because of what Israel is doing to Palestine and the stronghold that they have over the media and the narratives that are being perpetuated through our governments. The Council of CARE also reported receiving over 3,500 complaints during just the last 3 months of last year. So you can see how much October 7th and all the media that came out after just created this wildfire of hate here in the US. And it needs to be stopped because nothing good is going to come out of this. Whenever
it was framed improperly, they did not talk about the history. They didn't take it to 1948 and prior to that, with heinous crimes committed against the Palestinians by the Israelis for over 76 plus years. That wasn't mentioned. And then you had these stories, these fabricated stories that have been debunked about beheaded babies and the systemic rape of women during all this chaos. It's absurd. And it's been debunked. And it's even been debunked by Israeli sources. So people need to wise up. But when the president and Congress are still using these incidents and still using this propaganda, this hasbara in their responses to your petitions and interviews in line, and these talking heads in the media are still spewing these lies in order to justify a genocide. I mean, this is straight evil. This is straight out of the Joseph Goebbels playbook. Matter of fact, I think they're way more advanced than Goebbels, and it's horrendous. Goebbels would, I think he'd actually be impressed by their level of evil and propaganda, even if he hated them.
Mm-hmm. And, to kind of put a bow on this question of how I feel about all this, quite simply, I've left the country, Joe, much like the mother of the child who almost drowned from this crazy, drunk, by the way, woman. She was intoxicated in Texas. Yeah. She feels like our country is fighting a war. Nobody is safe there. And we are here fighting the hate. Nobody is safe here. I'm a tough chick. I'm not scared of anybody, but I also don't want to end up in jail. I know that I will stand up for myself and not be represented equally in this country. I am now living abroad, strategizing to stay in places where they love Palestinians, where they love Muslims, where they accept us, because it's out of control here. I may feel safe, thank God, by our neighbors next door at my parents' home here in the suburbs of Chicago. We're very fortunate to have open-minded, good American neighbors. But you step outside this block and try to go to Walmart or an establishment nearby, and you can very easily run into all kinds of situations. I mean, even our little neighborhood community Facebook groups, one of them had to be remoderated by the administrator because she's so sick of literally everything she's posting. It was always brought back to politics and Hamas and the Democrats. And she's like, I'm just posting a lost dog. It shouldn't go back to that. Since when was our community so hyper divided on these political issues that we've lost sight of like what we're supposed to be doing here together locally? Like, this lost dog has nothing to do with where the people took it. But the moment that they seen a Palestinian woman who is in the community commenting, they just had to take it somewhere extremely inappropriate. Like, really? Don't your people believe that dogs are the devil? Like, you savages usually believe this and that. And like, yes, okay, there are some Muslims who don't believe in having pets in the home except for cats. But I'm a Muslim. I had a dog for 17 years. Like, we don't need to just generalize everyone and take things so innocent, like the subject of a lost dog, to somehow a debate about Hamas and Islam. And it's just insane. I'd rather live somewhere where I feel safe to say that I'm Palestinian, where I'm not holding my breath because I don't know what the person's going to respond with, to be open with my faith and be able to go to the mosque. And by the way, much more freely, because I'm living in places where you hear the calls of the mosque and they have them more frequently. Like, the polar differences in this country, if they were to play the call to prayer from a mosque, which is something from God, something beautiful, something innocent, they would turn it into, some sort of terrorist call, and many people would complain that why are they playing that, and they don't believe in that, and blah blah. And it's just crazy. I don't expect us to get to that point where we're able to hear our mosque calls, but even here we have to be careful. There has been violence that has targeted the mosques. In the countries that I'm traveling to, that won't fly in any house of God, but especially at a mosque. So I feel like I can't fully express myself here. I can't, they're even making laws as business owners. If you're open about BDS, how you will be penalized, how you will have to pay fines. Like, I can't express myself, operate my business, live freely, truly free as a Palestinian Muslim like I can abroad. And granted, there are some countries that wouldn't be much better, right? Germany wouldn't be better, but there are majority countries in the world, many more countries, where I feel like I can breathe a little easier, like I can be myself. Like, I have people who actually feel our pain and actually cry when they see the news, and they want to be my friend, to learn more and to know the truth, and they're not scared. They're not.
Well, you're not the scapegoat for their war crimes either. They don't have to use you as and demonize you in order to justify what they've done for decades. And like I say, this is the very tragic thing here. And the question I'm going to ask now kind of ties into that. Many members of the media and elected government representatives have labeled recent protests as student encampments as pro-Hamas rallies.
So crazy.
Please speak to that, because I hear on the news too, the pro-Hamas, this pro-Hamas group. Speak to that, please.
You know what? There's a very simple answer to that, because like the previous question, I can go on all day about my experiences and whatnot, but very simply answered. So, are Jewish people pro-Hamas? Because last time I checked, everyone was trying to defend the Jewish people and say how Hamas was killing them. We all need to get on the same page about how Jewish people are leading these movements. They are standing alongside us and actually organizing these encampments. If not now, Jewish Voice for Peace.
Yeah.
There's so many new groups even forming, which is so heartwarming. For a while, just Jewish Voice for Peace, and I'm trying to remember who the other one was before, if not now. But now there's just so many. And our media internally in the Palestinian community and our allies on social media, we try to beat the censorship and algorithms, continue to share these beautiful videos of Jews and Muslims praying together, and the amazing Jews that have started these movements for us, with us. And I mean, you just sound like an idiot talking about how these encampments are pro-Hamas. Like, really? So American Jews are organizing pro-Hamas rallies. I mean, that just makes no sense. That contradicts their actual argument about how Hamas wants to kill all Jews. Like, make it make sense. So that's usually...
I've never heard one of them call them an anti-genocide rally. You're not going to hear that on Fox News or hardly anywhere else.
Anti-war, anti-genocide. We don't even want to call it a war. We know it's a genocide, but my God, we'll take anti-war over pro-Hamas. I've been to these protests since way before October 7th. Mm-hmm. I'm still failing to understand why they think they can get away with labeling us as pro-Hamas. Nobody is chanting for Hamas. There's no Hamas representatives there. And I think I learned recently one of their attempts was off of the Intifada revolution now. But again, stupidity. Does anybody take a moment to look at the definition of Intifada? Like, it's an uprising against the Israeli occupation. It began in 1987 when Hamas was formed by Israel. So know your history and stop acting like one word in Arabic that you don't even know the definition to is like the end all be all reason for this being a pro-Hamas movement. Like, no, it's actually a term that's been used in other movements as well. It's not necessarily pro-Hamas. And yeah, like you said, it's anti-genocide. That's what it is. It's not pro anything other than pro-humanity and pro-life. So for all
Pro-love,
these
pro-peace.
conservatives
Yeah.
who want to argue about pro-life and then argue against these entrapments, like, once again, just contradicting themselves. You're pro-death. That's what you are. If you're labeling us as pro-Hamas, they have been peaceful. That's the other thing. Like, any moments of chaos were ensued by the police, were ensued by instigators starting nonsense with the protesters. And even then, the protesters didn't respond in violence. I mean, you're trying to paint out the educators, the professors, people in their 60s and 70s who are dressed in their nice suits and looking like politicians. And, you're not going to label our own terrorist politicians for what they are, but you're going to label another individual dressed exactly like them, as educated as them, with a platform like them, using it, but for the betterment of humanity, to speak against genocide, and then arrest them like there's some thugs or goons, the way they're slamming these female elderly teachers into the ground. Like, the only violence is coming from the police that are doing that
against Jewish people too. Against Jews, a lot of these professors are Jews,
right?
It is absolutely ludicrous. And then to gaslight these people and call them self-hating Jews and idiots, and you got Christians. You're not even Jewish. You're speaking to this. You really think you can speak to this situation that you're so ignorant of, that you're John Hagee and Sean Hannity and Netanyahu and all the whole propaganda machine. I'm just telling you, you've been brainwashed. It's time to get educated, and there's enough information out there. And the first people I'll send you to are Israeli historians and Jews who will tell you the truth. Okay.
Yeah.
The first one will be Ilan Pappé, and I can get you the link to his book, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, and you can see it for yourself.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to what I was saying. So yeah, my answer is it's completely ludicrous, and these people are completely ignorant and stupid and often not worth my time to educate. But I try to tell them, would you just look up at the Jewish people that are organizing these encampments, and then please answer to me how they could be pro-Hamas, because you're also telling me that Hamas wants to kill all the Jews. So help me understand your standpoint. And that's as far as I need to go. And they will see. The name of the other group, by the way, is Jewish Anti-Zionist Network. They're awesome.
That's pretty straightforward.
Yep. So, I mean, we have Jewish Anti-Zionist Network, Jews for Palestine, Jews Against Zionism, Jewish Voice for Peace, Jews for Peace. If not now, the list goes on. And that's not including the specific individuals, right? Like Medea Benjamin. Love her. Code Pink. Calling out all of the politicians on their AIPAC funding, attending the encampments. Like, so she's a Jew. Is she pro-Hamas? I mean, it just makes no sense. You're just getting sucked into the stupid Fox News propaganda that's being used to distract you from not just what's happening in Gaza, by the way, but everything they're not doing for their own citizens and country here. And it's just crazy. I can't even take those people serious. At this point, there's enough information out there. You have enough accessibility to, when you hear something like that, to doing some more research. And then, like, how else I feel about that? Why don't you research Hamas? Like, yesterday I was just watching the news on El Mawasi camp, and research Hamas the correct way, right? Not through Fox News, but through like ifamericansknew.org and various alternative news sites that are unbiased by a certain political party or AIPAC. But I was watching what was happening in El Mawasi yesterday, and the spokesperson for Hamas, I mean, he didn't even look like what the media tries to portray as a terrorist that they demonize us, they caricature us to be out to look like, right? Like, he wasn't wearing anything on his head. He wasn't wearing a scarf around his face. He had no weapons on him. He was legit presenting his face, unafraid, speaking as a politician, as a businessman. So, if I was to show the average American a picture of this man, they wouldn't even know who he is.
No.
If I was to put him alongside a picture of the lady when she was drunk who tried to drown the 3-year-old in Texas, a picture of some of our domestic terrorists here in the US, and maybe one random terrorist in the Middle East that was trying to cover his face and armed, I bet you everyone would never answer that the Hamas guy was the terrorist. So it's just another example of use your eyes, not just your ears. Use both, but you can't just go off of what you hear from Fox News or even what you see on there. When you're presented with the actual video of what is happening in Gaza, of the spokesperson for Hamas, of the Jewish people on the encampments, like, what is your common sense telling you right now? That should make more sense to you. When you see that the child who was executed 4 days ago had Down syndrome, like, how can you just run with the narrative that they killed over 100 people in less than 5 minutes because they were targeting Mohammed Deif, the Hamas leader? These are the same people that just executed a kid with Down syndrome. So before you get all scared about this Hamas leader, like, I don't know, Joe, wouldn't you be a little more scared of the guy who's going to shoot a kid with a disability in cold blood? Like,
it's sick, but the thing is, people will allow all manner of atrocities when they have deified and glorified a nation state and equated them with God's supreme chosen, and all of a sudden the rules do not apply to them. And this is the arrogance of so many American Christians and Israeli Zionists. Most Israeli Zionists don't even believe in God. That's what Elon Pape, Israeli historian, said.
Crazy.
But they believe he gave them the land, which
Crazy.
is absolutely ludicrous. So when you have these supremacist ideologies and, quote, God is behind it, then all of a sudden you have all these exceptions to the rule, and you overlook these things, and you're always looking for some sort of confirmation bias. And a lot of these people right now are dealing with serious cognitive dissonance, and also just with all of the information that's out there, their God-given humanity is seeing things, and people are rethinking things, but we've got to get out of that box, out of these horrible theological boxes that just breed hatred. And that's everyone, and the stereotypes, it is absolutely disgusting. And these things, like I say, these things, we're going to overcome them. We are going to overcome them, but it's a matter of this needs to happen sooner than later. And I'm glad so many people, especially these young voices, are speaking up.
Yeah.
All right. Now, got another question for you here. Okay. Some experts are estimating the death toll in Gaza to exceed 200,000, with a very large majority of victims being children and women. Meanwhile, the American media appears to be glossing this over, while many Americans remain virtually indifferent or celebratory over this genocide. How does this make you feel?
Not much different than the complete neglect to all the hate crimes happening to us and Palestinians and Muslims being less than, to be acknowledged even in our lived experiences. It's like you said, fortunately now we have more people speaking up. So it's keeping a little bit of hope alive. And I'm seeing more of my friends who have been leaning in the other direction on many political issues start to centralize, and if anything, start to lean in the other direction. And it's giving me hope because a lot of those people are in unique positions or come from different backgrounds where I know they're going to reach their communities probably more effective than I will. But it is really discouraging and hurtful. And, it seeps into every part of our life because we're questioning our existence and our place and our, meaning. And it's developing like these anxieties and insecurities that, like I said, seep into other areas of my life. So, if I'm feeling like I'm posting, I'm getting out there and protesting, I'm public speaking, and everything I'm doing is getting censored or removed, and maybe people in my inner circle aren't engaging as much or as available to listen, you just feel like, you said it recently, like a mouse with a bullhorn, like you're just trying so hard to shout and nobody's hearing you. And then like something little will happen in my day where someone in my inner circle won't be answering me and ignoring me. And I see that they're available and doing something else. And I can't help but let these feelings that I'm experiencing every day, just trying to express myself as a Palestinian or to speak up for what's happening to the Muslims during prayer in Gaza. The mosque is being bombed just yesterday. Like, I can't help but feel that like anxiety of like, this person doesn't care about me. I'm not important. They're not listening. Like, I'm not being heard. It's like I don't exist to them. It's all around feeling of like, we don't exist. And
time is of the essence because these genocidal maniacs, I don't care. You can drop pamphlets saying we're going to bomb your house, and here's a safe zone. They go to what is supposed to be the safe zone and they're murdered. They're massacred. And then they go to find their loved ones under the rubble just to give them a decent burial, hopefully. And what happens? They bomb on top of that. They wait for that and they bomb them. And it's just constantly happening. And right now, I mean, if we're looking at over 200,000, I mean, this is approaching, 250,000 people.
Yeah.
Human beings.
It's probably already there.
Yes. Human beings created in the image of God, who, if you look into their eyes and you have any bit of humanity, you couldn't help but feel for these women and these children and these men. Do not devalue, degrade Palestinian men or any men. A lot of time we talk about children and women like men aren't worth anything, but men too, these precious, precious men. And there is no reason for this to be happening to our brothers and sisters in humanity other than greed and a hunger for power. And really, to me, something that is so satanic, an ideology that is so satanic that just like Nazism, it needs to be abolished from the earth. I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about an ideology. Do you understand me? If you're listening. If you're listening, please, okay? This is just like anyone in the 1940s says Nazism has got to go. It doesn't mean the extermination of Germans. It's Nazism, okay?
Right.
Just like Christian Zionism is an ideology, a demonic, genocidal ideology, an earth-destructing ideology. I mean, one of the most diabolical, crazy things ever to hit humanity's gray matter is Christian Zionism. It needs to be abolished. Does that mean that Christians need to? No, we're not talking about this. You do not have to harm people to destroy ideology. That comes from a mindset of knuckle draggers who always have to resort to the military-industrial complex and think they are doing God's bidding. God is love. God is peace. Jesus is the Prince of Peace, according to us Christians, and he has nothing to do with this nonsense that you are attributing to him. And when you make this thing divine and you say that this thing is of God, I don't know that there's a worse way to blaspheme God than to make the one who is love into a destroyer and a hater and a supremacist who is on the side of just his precious few chosen ones, and he doesn't care about these others. It's it's nuts. Just like people that said, oh, oh, God caused that bullet to just graze Trump's ear. And well, did he not care about the person who died? Okay, who bled out to death right there before the EMTs could even really get on the scene, just dead. We need to watch what we attribute to God. We need to watch who we create as a messianic figure. We need to watch all these things because they are so destructive and it is so cult-like. These are idols. Okay, I'll tell you this. Israel is an idol. Trump is an idol. Netanyahu is an idol. Biden has been many people's idols. Okay, we are to love our Creator and love each other. And in order to do that, and in order to apply equality and love and true justice, this has to be without prejudice. We need to see beyond those things. We need to reach out to people who don't look like us, don't believe like us, and befriend them, have dialogue, have discussion, and really search history and do our research in this age of information, okay? And begin to be human. Begin to be human. That's my advice. Begin to be truly human because we were not created for this.
Yeah. And I appreciate you once again being so brave to touch on all of those topics and to word them how you did, because the moment that any of us do, especially me being a Palestinian Muslim who's pro-Palestine, pro-humanity, immediately you're labeled as anti-Semitic. And as, every parallel that we could draw to how what is happening is no different than to Nazism and what Hitler did. And you're talking hundreds of thousands of people. How else do I feel about this? Particularly infuriated because before these numbers were released, for a long time, they just sat at like 40, 50, 60,000. And it felt like me and every other Palestinian were screaming from the rooftops that that's not even the real number. When people are completely obliterated by bombs, when all you have left is an elbow or a fragment of the skull, their teeth, whatever, you can't even count these people.
No,
so there
it's not like a video game where a number pops up when someone gets killed.
Yeah, like
these people are ignorant. It's just stupid.
And then, not to mention, for decades, Israel's been kidnapping Palestinians. So there are many people missing. For all we know, they could be dead. They're not even accounted for in the detainees that we know that they have, which they're putting at 5,000. Well, if the missing Palestinians, according to ifamericans.org and PSC Brixton, Palestinian Solidarity Campaign in South London, that's another great reference as well, pscbrixton.org, their numbers are over 15,000 missing. Yet there's 5,000 detainees in Israeli prisons. Again, the numbers aren't mathing. So we know that this has reached a genocidal level way before anybody even wanted to start allowing us to entertain that word. Because remember, for the longest time, even just mentioning that word, now it's finally become mainstream. I actually seen genocide in Gaza on a CBS headline. But before, it was a debate if we could even use that word. And we've been saying, why this number is in the hundreds of thousands, but now it's news to everyone. Along with the Hannibal Directive, we've been telling you all on October 7th that Israel killed their own citizens, that they knew that they were going to kill their own, and shared everything basically that's being brought to light now about Hannibal Directive on October 7th. And it's just infuriating that the news cycle taking 9 months to catch up every time. And it's just costing more and more lives, just like the Holocaust.
I think that's according to plan. I hate to be
I was going to say it's
but I believe it's according to plan. You cannot tell us that our nation, with the intelligence it has, the satellite imagery, everything else, does not know what's going on over there. I believe they know exactly what's going on over there. And they have, like I said, they've been complicit in this genocide. And it is horrific. And so if there's a bad guy, it's the ones committing genocide, the ones complicit in this genocide. And really, the ultimate evil of the whole thing is you're demonizing and gaslighting people that you have terrorized and occupied and committed genocide and ethnic cleansing against for 76 plus years. And in these prisons, there is torture, there's psychological abuse, sexual abuse. I've heard some firsthand, just some stories that were horrific. And I've heard some accounts from a young woman that I can't even repeat the things that happened, but they were so horrific and so savage and so inhumane and brutal that, like I say, our government we cannot back this. And time is of the essence. Don't be a virtue signaler later on, like people are with Native Americans. Like, oh, it's so bad that had to happen.
And that's what I was about to say.
What if you were alive and let it happen? What if you were alive and let it happen and were complicit in it? If you could have stopped it. Now, that's a big difference. Just like people during the Holocaust.
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't wait and virtue signal later. Oh, what a shame. And maybe we'll give them reparation.
Like 9 months later, when the news catches up again, now we're going to virtue signal. No,
That's what they do, especially these liberals, these neoliberals.
Yeah.
They love to do that. They will virtue signal.
And the reality is the last time in history that hundreds of thousands of people were annihilated for their race was when Nazism was on the rise and when what you described was happening, torture in prisons by doctors. I mean,
this is the same spirit, different name. This is the same, this is the same satanic element, just a different name, a different flag, a different emblem, same spirit, okay? And it is horrible. And let me tell you something, Jewish people scream about that louder than I do. And I stand with them. Recently did an interview with Rich Siegel, and just phenomenal, okay? You need to hear that. And he is called a self-hating Jew, and people hate him, but he is so beloved amongst the circles.
Isn't it funny how the non-Jews jump on that bandwagon and say...
I believe history will show people like him to be someone that absolutely heroic. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, isn't it funny how people who aren't even Jewish are jumping on that media talking point and calling people self-hating Jews? Like, you know, if we did that about any other race, it would be a big ordeal. Like, you're not allowed to call someone self-hating when you're not even part of that ethnicity. And even the Jews that are saying it are completely wrong. But it's just, again, reached another comical level to me. Like, sure. You are a Christian of Hispanic background and you want to call this person a self-hating Jew. All right.
That's like Joe Biden, you know. You don't vote for me, you ain't black.
Yeah.
What an idiot. All right. Let me move on to the next question. Okay.
Because we'll be on that one all day. How do I feel about 200,000 plus of us dead? Man. Could write 10 novels.
What does the slogan, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," mean to you?
Well, it definitely doesn't mean anything anti-Semitic. Let's get that out of the way. So, from the river to the sea.
You are Semitic, too. So you would be a self-hating Palestinian if you were an anti-Semite. So let's get that out of the way.
Another contradiction. It's just comical. I have been saying this in protest since I was a little girl, okay? This wasn't something that was just concocted in the last couple years. And again, whatever media narrative is being thrown out there. But I think a lot of people have awakened to that because, you know, there's references similar to this one in other countries' songs, like one of ours, From Sea to Shining Sea, right? Is that anti anything? I mean, we're literally talking about the borders of the U.S. from sea to sea, right? From Pacific to Atlantic. So it's literally just us referring to the freedom of our people occupied, whether it's alongside the Jordanian River or the Mediterranean Sea. It does not mean anything about the elimination of any race. When we talk about from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, we're referring from border to border, every individual in between will be free. Yeah. That includes
no apartheid walls, freedom of worship, freedom to go to Al-Aqsa, freedom to go to your own olive grove on the other side of a wall. Freedom
of movement, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, religion, freedom to breathe and to stand outside and enjoy the rain. I mean, the Israelis even tried to, there's laws against Palestinians collecting rainwater. We're not even free to do that. So that's what we're referring to. Where they draw the correlation of that to Hamas and supporting terror, again, another asinine conversation, ludicrous, just completely comical. It's simply us referring to our complete freedoms of every individual, Palestinian Muslims, Christians, and Jews, for everyone to be free in an area that's historically called Palestine. So I don't know what else I can really say on that one. That's
good. It's a call to freedom. But man, if you got a God complex that you control rain and say who can and can't have it, you have a serious mental illness. I mean, you are seriously delusional and just pure evil, deny people basic sustenance. And again, this has been going on for a long time. Gaza has been an open air concentration camp, basically, for a long time. Nothing started on October 7th, nothing at all. This is just the narrative from which they desire to frame their genocide. And Mary Davis and I talked about this too, and just the breakdown in security, the having Ziopalooza concerts right near an open air concentration camp, knowing people are going to get out. And to me, it's like if you condemn what Hamas did on October 7th, and Norman Finkelstein says the same thing, then you would have to condemn the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And I say, I hate all violence, and I denounce all violence. I can understand why desperate people and oppressed people do what they do. And as a white Christian of European descent, sitting here in Indiana, I really don't have a whole lot of business dictating on how people should liberate themselves or seek to be recognized as human beings in a place where they have been treated worse than animals. So that's not my place. And a lot of times I get really tired of people who have absolutely zero skin in the game, so to speak, don't know crap about the subject. I've read tens of thousands of pages, spent thousands of hours on this topic, historically and theologically. And when someone who listens to Sean Hannity and their congressman or whoever, and their pastor, and thinks they're just going to come in and talk about what kind of solution they have for Palestine, I'm just like, please, just humble yourself, please, okay? As much as I've studied, I'm learning every single day. And it's time for people to open themselves up, humble themselves, and respect Palestinians for the precious human beings that they are.
Amen. Those people are the same people that would be calling from the river to the sea anti-Semitic and then want to have a whole solution for how to help us, supposedly. I just wanted to mention something quick on that topic that has
and their theology doesn't want to help you. Their theology wants to ethnically cleanse you or genocide you. I mean, that's the theology. That's the theology. So if they think God's in it, they're all on the side of what they believe their God has said. And it's foolishness. It's pure evil. And I've discussed that in another podcast. We'll continue to. You can find more on internationalpeacenetwork.org. And if anybody, any pastor out there, you want to debate me live with rules and a moderator on this topic, theologically and historically, I will stand toe to toe with you. And I love you. I will speak in love, but I will speak the truth. And I will grind your satanic heresy like the golden calf that it is. Okay? Go ahead.
I just wanted to add something real quick on that topic that's been on my heart lately because, it's just crazy. But a while back after October 7th, I remember reading something in the AP, and I just looked it up to make sure of where I read it. It goes along with a lot of other things, buzzwords out there right now on this topic that are being misconstrued. But why is it when it comes to us, the Palestinians, everything that we're dealing with, simple words with simple definitions are being warped and just modified to fit whatever situation? The AP News said in November about the from the river to the sea statement, like so much of the Mideast conflict, what the phrase means depends on who is telling the story and which audience is hearing it. Why? Words have meaning. There's a dictionary for a reason. Why is it so much of the Mideast conflict? Any other conflict in the world, when you say something is happening, that's what it is. Or when you use a certain word, that's the definition. But when it comes to us, what the phrase means depends on who is telling the story and which audience is hearing it. No, what it means across the board is we are fighting for equality and freedom for over 75 years of occupation. And it's very similar to what that crazy racist Rabbi Shuli was saying when he was interviewed by Candace Owens. And she simply asked him, define anti-Semitism. And this guy kept insisting that it's an evolving definition. It used to mean this. Now it means this. And she was like, no, that's my problem. I'm trying to get to a place of understanding and debate this with you, but we can't if we don't even agree on the definition of the word. How can it be forever evolving? Every other racial definition remains what it is. Like, we know what it means to be anti-Black. We know what it means to be anti-trans. We know what it means to be, but when you want to say anti-Semitism, we can't stick with that definition. It's forever evolving. It depends why. Everything is, it can't be believed anymore. It can't. I hope people just start really waking up and seeing that, like, we are truly the only race that is constantly being told that our words don't even mean what they mean. Like, what? I thought we all read the same dictionary. Like, it's just, it's out of control. So at this point, we don't care. We used to be concerned. We used to shy away from using that phrase in certain spaces, which you can see now, people in higher positions, they're being shunned and shut down and censored. For our own representative to leave was censored by the White House for saying from the river to the sea in 2023.
It's like condemning Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech. And
exactly. I have a dream. Are you going to change that definition now?
What's his dream? Kill all the white people. It's code. It's code. Dog whistle. Yeah, exactly. You get enough Congress people and media talking heads to repeat it. You have these zombies. That's what it is.
And they're doing this on purpose because they know that we're getting somewhere when all we have to do is share the facts. It's pretty clear. It pretty much speaks for itself, like.
And everything that's on the internet, all these people with phones over there. Let's say, the Jews in the 1940s were at a disadvantage that they didn't have phones to document these crimes. This is being documented in real time. The cat is so out of the bag. Let's say this is historically this is what, and it's a shame because this is going to so put an asterisk and overshadow the Holocaust in the history book and in the psyche and the minds of young people in years to come. And I don't want it to fuel true anti-Semitism, whether that's anti-Arab or anti-Jew. But people doing things in the name of pretending, that it's Judaism, and these geopolitical mass murder campaigns and ethnic cleansing. That's got to stop. There's nothing more anti-Semitic than that, and things that are detrimental to people and heartbreaking to so many Holocaust survivors and precious Jewish people who just will not tolerate this happening in their name. Yeah. Oh, got another question for you. Okay. All right. Now, the West, especially Great Britain and the U.S., are responsible for so much death, ethnic cleansing, genocide, and suffering in Palestine over the past 76 plus years. How does that make you feel, also knowing that a fairly hefty portion of Arab world governments are complicit in these crimes against humanity?
Like I said earlier, Joe, it makes me feel like a fish out of water in this country. And then it doesn't help when I leave this country and I travel abroad and I make stops in places like Jordan, where my family is. Mm-hmm. And I see that their government is just as complicit in these war crimes as our home here in America. It feels like we have truly no place. We're being displaced from our actual homeland. And then it's like, and then where do you guys want us to go? Nobody loves us except South Africa and Ireland, and they can only do so much. And, it's just really unfortunate. I reached a point, like I shared earlier in my life, where all I can do is focus on what I can control. So for me personally, it's living abroad, exploring different places that I can settle down, where over 50% of every dollar I spend doesn't go to funding this ethnic cleansing and this genocide. I mean, for example, I'm staying in Tanzania a lot, and many people will argue, well, there's a lot of corruption there too. Well, there's a lot of poverty there too. Yeah, well, they're not funding any wars. They're not over here trying to grab land. So it exists everywhere. But it's really reached a place where it's, for me personally, unmanageable here. There's other Palestinians living here. They have no choice but to deal with it. But and it's unfortunately a hot topic in the community that we've debated on for years. I think now finally more people in our community have reached their boiling points as well. And they're not just going to fall for that angle that a lot of non-Arabs use, which are, well, what about the Arab countries? Yeah, we know that. Trust me, we're very disappointed about that. But we're not going to focus on that. They, at the end of the day, are under the Western stronghold and influence. And I can't even begin to imagine what kind of blackmail, extortion, whatever leaders of Arab countries are being put under. Now, a lot of it is just also pure greed. I refer to the Egyptians often as Egyptian Zionism. It exists there with what they're doing at the border. They don't need to be charging $10,000 a person just to get out of Gaza to get treatment. So it is really disappointing, and it's going to just take time, like here in the US, where the new generation is slowly infiltrating these spaces and hopefully going to invoke the change that we need to see, where people aren't, as invested in their personal oil or global interests and focused on what comes first, like that we are humans, and especially the Arab countries that are Muslim Arab countries, that there's a large Muslim population in Palestine and Islamic historical sites that aren't even being protected. Like, this is something that Saudi Arabia and the UAE should be jumping in and defending. But of course, they're fueling it. They're in bed with Israel. And I don't think it's going to go on too much longer. I hope we see more changes in my lifetime. It might take in our children's lifetime before we see some of those changes. I hope the genocide has stopped way before then, at the very least.
Yes.
But yeah, it's like every other question you asked me, we just feel not just politically homeless, but homeless in every way. Like, where are we truly accepted and treated like every other human being? Because it seems to be lagging with our own. And we try to focus on how these are the governments and not the people. So I don't want to go back and visit Jordan, but I have no choice. My family's there. And at the end of the day, it's not in my best interest to boycott tourism to Jordan, for example, with our travel company, because majority of the people working in tourism there are Palestinian, and they were displaced, and they're just trying to make a living. So it's tricky. It's a very, I'm trying to find the word to like describe this feeling of complete contradiction and feeling like you don't exist. I don't even think there's a word in the dictionary to describe this feeling, but it truly affects you on a subconscious level as a human. And when you're trying to develop various relationships, I don't want to become one of those people that is like, oh, she feels that way because I'm Arab or because I'm Muslim. But I can't help to let my mind go there when just everywhere it's like ignorant questions and just continuous mistreatment. And again, let me also say though, like, this isn't a pity party for me by any means. I'm just sharing my responses to these questions and what I feel. I know that the feelings I'm sharing are nothing compared to how people in Gaza must be feeling now. They don't even matter. They don't exist. They're less than human. I can't even begin to imagine how they feel because I'm barely breaching the surface of those emotions. And I'm still able to live here in peace mostly, right? And eat and drink and go about my day and act like a normal American. So if that's how I feel when I have all my needs met, I can only imagine when you've been stripped of everything and just reminded every second of the day that you don't even deserve water. You don't even deserve food. Your kids don't even deserve to feel like children. You don't deserve to have a husband. I just got off the phone before I spoke with you for one of my new campaigns for Let Them Grow Up, the charity that I started to help kids in Gaza and Mafia Island, Tanzania. And the mom I was speaking with, you know, she has no husband. She has her 4 kids. She's trying to take care of her mom. She's trying to take care of her sister. They've lost everything, their home, their business. And by the grace of God, survived the bombardments yesterday. She's in Khan Yunis, seaside. But yeah, you know, I'm talking to her today and my heart was just breaking, knowing like my one phone call made her day, made her kids' day, made them feel like, okay, somebody cares about us. I wish there was so much more that I could do. And we do have a recent donation going to her, but it's not enough. But still, like, I know that that is helping with her feeling of like, literally nobody cares about us. What did my children do to deserve this? I don't have a husband here to help me. I'm just one woman who's reaching out to everyone and trying to get them to have any sort of humanity to help with our situation. As much as she wants to stay in her home, like she's ready to leave. Her campaign, like many other Palestinians, is to raise money to exit through Egypt because they're charging $5,000 to $10,000 a person. And, you know, she's doing everything she can to just get to any place of safety, anywhere that's safer than where she's currently at, whatever the cost is. And so if anything, what I feel is a lot of explain like feel like guilt for living the life that I live, knowing that she's truly feeling the bulk of that emotion of how Palestinians just don't matter. we're less than human, that Ukraine is more important, Trump is more important. Anybody else who had something happen yesterday with some gunfire is more important. We aren't, even though we had over, again, I repeat, 100 people lost in less than 5 minutes. But yeah, like it just really breaks my heart to know that she's just one of thousands of mothers who are feeling that way and just so helpless. And I can't imagine living like that, and how just one phone call would make me feel like my life was worth more living that day. Fortunately, I have a lot more support here and people that I'm connected with that care and check on me. But people in Gaza, you know how long it's taken me just to connect with her? She's probably thought this whole time I'm ignoring her, but her signal's not great there. It's constantly shutting down the electricity, with her having to constantly move in between the camps. It's just been so hard to connect and communicate with her. And it made me happy to know that my phone call made her child smile, but it also broke my heart to know like how anxious she was just to have this call for a little feeling of humanity and hope. She's getting absolutely none of it. So that's where most of my emotion lies, constantly for the people of Gaza and thinking of them, and just constantly counting my blessings and remembering whatever I'm feeling, that they're feeling to an unimaginable degree, way worse. And that while I should be compassionate to myself and accept these emotions, I can't dwell on them too long. I have to fight for them. And, you know,
I think I can't pretend to know what you're going through, but just knowing that they are my fellow human sisters and brothers, and just the connection that I do have with Palestinians, which I believe is a divine, God-given love. And that's why I, focus on Palestinian. When you're hearing of these atrocities, it's been like over 9 months. And even before that, I mean, if you're an activist, you've been involved with this stuff for some people decades. And I say there's a place where we just really have to lean into the love and mercy of Allah. And don't let that freak you out, Christians. That's the Arabic word for God. Arabic God. Christians use Allah, so that's fine, but we really do. I think. And we'd go crazy if not for, I say, the quiet time, prayer, meditation, however we practice that, and just the hope that we have within our spirit, just to keep on keeping on, and to keep speaking and advocating and walking that. It seems sometimes the tension between just wanting to wail and weep intensely and also just take care of your family, to function every day in society, right, to not feel guilty about going out to dinner, although you're not going to post it on Facebook because you know that other people are starving to death. It's always on your mind. I mean, if you are, and I believe this is the mind of Christ, I mean, for humanity, it's going to be on your mind, and it's normal, but it's also normal to, and something with me, and again, this is so minute, but when you have no real support group, when you're not in a Palestinian community and you're an ally, it can get pretty lonely too. So anyone out there who ever needs prayer, ever needs just somebody to talk to, I'm not a psychoanalyst, but sometimes just it's therapeutic to be able to talk to one another, to pray with each other, and to strategize, and to just put your efforts forth into things that means something, and it really means something for time and eternity. So NeNe, I do want, when you send me the bio, please send me the link to be able to help this precious lady and her children. Thank you. And whoever finds it in their heart to respond to that. And again, there's no compulsion, and there's so many, the need is so great, and you do have to check who you're giving to, but I trust you and that you researched this. And so
Yeah.
I'm going to put
Thank
that
you.
link there so that people can help as they are led to do.
And I just wanted to say in response to that, that's what we can do with these emotions, right? So for me, I was like, what am I going to do? Just like dwell on this or like wait for the governments, Arab and West, that don't care about us? No, we can take individual action. And for me, I saw a need to help verify a lot of people that need help. There seems to be a lot of people that want to help. There seems to be a lot of people who need the help. But what's stopping them is all this propaganda perpetuated by our governments talking about, oh, they're people for Hamas or this or that. So that's what I'm doing with Let Them Grow Up. I'm channeling the emotions that I have and that energy into this charity and personally connecting with various people who either don't have GoFundMes or already have started them. And I'm always available for anyone listening. If you have any individuals that have reached out to you that you want to help, but you're not sure, I can always help you investigate that. I speak Arabic. I have connections on the ground in Gaza. And what I've also found is a lot of people are just more comfortable sending the donations to me instead of random GoFundMes. And I've done my best to share, thank you videos or footage of us actually distributing the goods to the orphans. So that's one thing we can do. Just think personally, what is something you can do to help the cause?
Yeah.
That's what you can do with those emotions. And then as far as the government, like we can be mad at them all day, but what can we do to help stop this? Well, July 24th, Netanyahu's supposed to come to town. We're all going to DC to stop him.
Thank you.
We can't stop that the government made these plans, but we sure as hell can disrupt it. And, just taking action in little ways like that collectively with other people who are feeling what we're feeling. Like you said, some of us are unfortunately not in a heavy Palestinian activism community area, but we have the power of social media and the internet now to connect us. That's how our entire relationship has been, and I'm so grateful for it. And there's a lot of action going on in different ways and different levels to it. Based on where you want to commit. There are groups like Pal Action actually shutting down arms factories in the UK. So yes, we're mad that the UK is funding the war crimes in Israel. But what are the citizens there doing? They're participating in collective action and they are shutting down these factories or trying to, at least, right? It's a slow process, but that branch has developed here. They've developed a branch here in the US. And they've begun taking action here, blocking roads where shipments are being delivered for these goods, blocking the boats. Different people.
I call that counterterrorism, and that's good trouble.
There's the flotillas, right? You can easily get involved in those. People think there's just one. No, there's people doing it from Brazil. There's people doing it from Europe. It's not just the boat that was held up in Turkey. There's various flotillas. And even if you can't go sail on the boat, which I encourage people to look into, you can still support that mission. You can donate there. You can spread awareness on that. So
Tell you what, let's compile a list. You send me yours and I can probably add a little bit and we can put it on the description as well, where people can people can get involved, because there are a lot of ways to get involved. If you're in the United States, available Thanksgiving weekend. I'm a Christian. I go every year to American Muslims for Palestine convention, and it's wonderful. It's beautiful. I'd love to hang out with you, and in our free time, we could have a real good time, as well as for the Christians, discuss some Christian theology, sound theology, and really help you with that. But really meeting people and just immersing yourself in the culture, you'll see how much love they have. And you'll also see with all these keynote speakers, there's no hate. There's just a desperation for freedom and equality. And really, American Muslims for Palestine conventions are some of the most beautiful meetings I've ever been in my whole life. Okay. And I have spoken thousands of times behind pulpits and been in innumerable meetings. Okay. And these gatherings they are absolutely wonderful. You get to meet people and you will feel loved and embraced. I can guarantee you that you come with an open mind, and Christians, you come with the heart of Jesus and wanting to love your neighbor. You will not be let down. Right.
Yeah. That's a good plug right there. I endorse them as well. They have been at the forefront of our cause, leading the way in many of our large-scale protests and actions. They're a great organization, and they helped us raise our first Palestinian flags here in Chicago in the city center. So that was a big deal for us.
People, of course, hate them at first sight. A lot of them, if they're already prejudiced, because you got Muslims Muslims in Palestine in the title. It's not, it's not Jewish Voice for Peace or anything else. And it's a shame that the bigotry and the hatred and all of that is there. But again, be a peacemaker like Jesus told us to be, and develop relationships, love people, get to know people.
And shout out to anyone listening who is a veteran or supports the military. I encourage you to check out Veterans for Peace. I believe that a lot of our listeners, based on my circles and your circles, are going to be a mixed bag, and a lot of people that might be, on the fence or on the opposing side. We're going to have a lot of supporters as well. But I encourage anyone here who's like questioning if the encampments are pro-Hamas to actually go to one. If they are a little fearful of what, the Muslims painted out Muslims, media's painted out Muslims to be, go to the AMA convention yourself and see. If you're former military and you're so for, defending Israel in this country, why don't you check out what the Veterans for Peace have to say? Me and you can talk about it here all day, but people should see for themselves and, then come back to us, just like we've done on other topics, right? When people want to debate the Quran and the Bible, and we're like, how about just go read the Quran and then come back and talk to us? Because it's a very different conversation once they've actually done that. Then it's like, oh, I didn't know this. Yeah, you just actually have to go read and see for yourself, like everything else we're doing in this country, right? Is anyone just listening to COVID directions anymore? No, you're kind of doing your own research. Is anyone just listening to what the government is telling them anymore? At this point, whichever side of the fence you're on, no, they're going and learning for themselves. So it shouldn't be any different when it comes to the Palestinian cause.
Yes. Go with an open heart and an open mind, and let the evidence speak for itself. And don't just be looking for sources that are just going to confirm your bias. Be really open. And again, I think Islamophobia is a great resource for those of you who are, you may be, have an aversion or a prejudice, against a Palestinian or Muslim writer, think that they have, because they've got skin in the game, or, they're not telling you the truth, whatever. Okay. There is that element of brainwashing, and I'm not condemning you for that. But what I'm saying is, if you're so Israeli and Jew and you're pro-Semite and everything, then hey, here's some Jews that you can listen to.
Finkelstein,
Miko Peled, Norman Finkelstein, and
come
and
on,
the list goes on.
Holocaust survivors, for God's sake! You're going to listen to anyone over a Holocaust survivor who had parents that survived the Holocaust? You're going to really fall for self-hating Jew propaganda. The biggest thing is, here is where the Palestinians differ from the Israelis. Everything that we present is evidence-based. Nothing that they present has evidence. We have the actual videos of the babies being beheaded on our side. They have nothing indicating that on their side, because it didn't happen. We have actual documentation of rapes. We have actual hostages returned to us from Israel that were dead, missing organs, not in the same shape. Every hostage returned to Israel seems to be in better moods and proud of talking what Hamas did that treated them so well, taking care of their dog and everything. Like, they have no evidence. And we can sit here and keep posting about it and keep talking about it, and we will. But I encourage people to go experience the evidence that's readily available for them. Like, it's not like you can't go to one of these things and see that they're completely peaceful, whether it's an encampment or a protest or whatever. I encourage you.
I long for the day when we're talking about good things and rebuilding and peace and freedom that is manifesting itself. I look forward to those conversations. But thank Allah, keeps us strong and with grace and peace and strength and comfort. And if not, we would all freak out and just disintegrate, I promise you. So we're very thankful. All right. Okay, my sister, I love you dearly. Please give your family my greetings. And
Thank you.
And appreciate you.
I love you too, Joe. I will give them your assalamu alaikum.
Yes, alaikum salam. Okay.
I'm sure they say alaikum salam. Give your family my greetings.
Okay. Yes.
It's always a pleasure speaking with you. I mean, it's not a pleasure of the circumstances we're speaking, but always increases my hope when we connect. And all those emotions that I expressed earlier, they make them a little more manageable when I know I've still got loyal people like you on my side. Thank you for everything that you're doing. And I hope that we reach a lot more people this time, because we've been talking about this for a couple years now together. That we see the suffering start to ease up and end soon.
Yes, it needs to. All right. Well, we'll be praying to that end. And I say, always here for you, sis. And just a text, phone call, message, whatever away. So, all right. I will talk to you soon, my dear sister. Have a great afternoon. If you enjoyed this podcast, please add another drop to our collective waterfall of love by subscribing and sharing it on social media. Thanks so much for listening to that wonderful interview with our precious sister, NeNe Mulhem. And remember, world peace is not only possible, it's inevitable.